Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Unleash Your Voice. I'm your host, Priya Sam, and today I have a solo episode for you based on one of the most common challenges women in mid to senior level roles face. So, if you've ever had this thought, I know I'm capable of more, I just don't know how to articulate it, this episode is for you. Because this is one of the most common experiences I hear about from the women who come into my world. They're smart, they're experienced, they're already operating at a high level, often higher than their job title would suggest. And yet, when it comes to job interviews, executive conversations, or even just talking about their work in one on ones with their manager or while networking with more senior leaders at their company, they struggle to find the words to communicate their impact. And sometimes that looks like freezing and fumbling. Other times it looks like rambling. But they often walk out of conversations thinking, I left something on the table there that didn't reflect what I'm actually capable of. And over time, that gap between what you know you can do and are doing and how you're showing up when you have to advocate for yourself, it starts to chip away at your confidence. So, today I really want to talk about why that happens. And I want to tell you a story about a client of mine because you might see yourself in her and it might help you find your way to that confident next level version of yourself that you're probably ready to step into. Okay, so before I get to her story, I want to anchor in something important. If you are getting job interviews, your resume is not the problem. Your experience is not the problem. If you're getting interviews but not offers, it's your interview performance. It's how you're articulating your value. And this is where so many high performing women get stuck because for a lot of you, no one has ever taught you how to do that, right? How to build those strong communication and articulation skills that allow you to articulate your value at an executive level. Okay, so let me tell you about Taylor. Taylor left her role at a large tech company and moved to an earlier stage tech company. And within a few months, she knew it wasn't right. The culture was intense, what some people call 996. If you've ever heard of this, and if not, we're basically working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, 996. So after a few months of this, she made a really intentional decision to leave. It just wasn't what she was looking for, and she did not have another job lined up. Now, in her case, this wasn't a reckless decision. She'd been saving for years. She actually always had this idea of at some point taking a career break. And at this point, she was about 15 years into her career. And, with the way everything aligned, she thought, you know what, maybe this is the time. So she took the summer off in 2025. She traveled, she spent time with friends. She really gave herself some space. She also did some upskilling in coding, in AI and automation, areas she was really passionate about. So then fall came around and she decided, it's time to re-enter the job market. And at first, things were looking really good for her. She was getting a lot of interviews, recruiter screenings were going well. She was even getting to later rounds for some of these jobs, but then she wasn't getting offers. And after about 4 months of this, it started to take a toll on her confidence and just her mental well-being, right? And for any of you who maybe have been searching for a while, or maybe in the past you've experienced this, or maybe you're in a job right now that's mentally draining and you're also trying to search on the side, you probably know this feeling, right? It's mentally draining, emotionally draining, and then also your confidence becomes a little shaky when you experience some amount of rejection. And for her, it was a significant amount in a short period of time. So she came to me in December and she said something that I hear all the time. I know I have strong experience. I know I can do the jobs I'm applying for, but I can feel the disconnect between what I'm capable of and how I'm articulating it in interviews. And she did receive some direct feedback from one of the interview processes she had been in where she made it to a later stage. She was directly told, your resume is great, but you're not clear on your story and value in interviews. And that's really the moment that things clicked for her because the issue wasn't her capability, it was her articulation. There was a gap between what she knew how to do, the impact she was creating and could create, and the way she was communicating that in job interviews. And that gap is what I call the articulation gap. It's where high performers plateau because early in your career, you're rewarded for doing great work. But as you move into more senior roles, you're evaluated on how well you can communicate the impact of that work and specifically what you did differently to get results. Notice I said you, not your team, not we. Hiring managers want to hear I in your answer so they can clearly understand how you think and operate, what you specifically contributed, how you influenced the outcome of a project or initiative. So when Taylor and I started working together, we did not jump into mock interviews. We didn't start with tell me about yourself. We started with clarity. Every person I work with needs to start by building a strong foundation. So we started by defining her core themes. And if you've been in my world for a while, you've been to my master class or any of my workshops, you've heard me talk about core themes. Simply put, core themes are elevated, specific ways to describe what sets you apart. And if you're coming to my master class on the 25th, you're going to learn a lot more about these core themes then. So core themes are not I'm collaborative, I'm innovative. Those are entry level descriptors. They work to land entry level 50 to 80K roles. But when you're getting interviews for six-figure jobs, and in Taylor's case, she was targeting 200K plus roles, you need to show up with 200K language. You need to use elevated, sophisticated language and stories that clearly differentiate you from other candidates. Language that really captures how you make decisions, how you lead, what you actually do that creates impact. So let me give you an example because with all of my clients, we start with clarity, like I mentioned, and often part of that is a discovery process. So Taylor went through this process. It involves doing a deep dive on key initiatives you've worked on, key projects, turning points in your personal and professional life, of what really sets you apart, how you work differently. And once I have all of that information, I'm looking for patterns. So from there, we built three core themes. And I do recommend everyone has three of these core themes: your distinct skill set, your natural superpower, and then your action oriented value. So one of the themes we built for Taylor was I'm a clarity builder. I build trust by getting to the heart of the problem through deep discovery. I align technical teams and senior leaders around what actually matters for their business. Do you see how much more elevated that is compared to I'm a team player? I'm collaborative, right? I'm a clarity builder. Okay, once she had that language, can I just tell you that everything changed? So that was one of her three core themes. But once she had those elevated, sophisticated phrases to capture her impact and what differentiated her, her confidence shifted almost immediately because now she didn't just know she was good at what she did. She had the words to explain why and words that would land with leaders, executives, and hiring managers. And she could use them not just in job interviews, but also on her LinkedIn profile, in her resume, in her cover letters. And this is something that I really want you to take in because confidence doesn't come from hype. It comes from clarity. When you have the language for your value, you show up differently. You speak differently. You think differently about yourself. So that was one of her three core themes. And like I said, I recommend those three for everyone: the distinct skill set, natural superpower, and action oriented value. Those are your foundation for really your personal brand. They become the foundation of your power stories, using how you use your experience and key impact moments to really illustrate what sets you apart in job interviews. So that's exactly what we did for Taylor. And after our first set of sessions, we had a strong power story bank that she could pull from to answer any interview questions. And this is key because when you learn frameworks that are repeatable, right? So aside from building the stories, you're learning a framework that you can use to build your interview answers. It's called the Power Star framework. And if you're familiar with the STAR framework, this is an elevated version. STAR is great for, again, entry level roles. But when you get to that multi six figure role, then you really need to add story to your answer. So the Power Star framework does that. So Taylor learned this framework aside from building her power stories and these key stories she could pull from. She also learned the framework. So in interviews, when she got asked a question, if she needed to build an answer on the spot, she could do that using this new framework. And I actually want to share part of her Tell Me About Yourself answer for job interviews with you because it's a great example of where elevated articulation and key stories come together. Most people, when they get asked this question, they summarize their resumes. Well, I started my career here. I spent 5 years here. I spent 10 years here. Telling the interviewer things they already know. And can I just tell you, if you start off this way on a boring, generic note, you're not laying the foundation for a strong interview. This answer is your first impression. Okay, so this is how to stand out. So imagine Taylor's in an interview, and as with most interviews, she gets asked this first question: why don't you start by telling us about yourself? And she says, well, the work I've been most passionate about during my career sits at the intersection of go-to-market and technical execution. And there are really two themes that define how I work. First, there's a challenge. If there's a challenge and the solution involves AI and improving or building new go-to-market systems, my colleagues usually turn to me first. I'm passionate about designing AI-enabled workflows that connect sales tools, data, and automation into systems that help teams move faster and close revenue. One recent example that comes to mind is a customer research workflow solution I built to help teams access the highest quality data fast to speed up account prep, a process that was taking teams hours at my previous company. So I built that, implemented it, and rolled it out to the entire sales team. Second, I've also been described as a clarity builder, and that's because I build trust quickly by going deep, doing thoughtful discovery, and getting to the real issue behind requests from customers and prospects. And that's what's really helped me to align very technical teams and more strategic senior leaders around a solution. For example, at my last company, I was working with a client called Connects. I recognized early on that security would be the real decision point for them. So I changed course and led with permissions and guardrails first. What that did is it shifted the conversation from skepticism to momentum early in the deal cycle because they started to see us as a trusted partner instead of just another vendor. So leading from clarity served me well there, and it has on most of my accounts as well. Really, no matter what my job title, my sweet spot is find the real problem, design a solution that exceeds the customer's expectations, and leverage AI and automation to make it easy for teams to execute and drive sales. Okay, that answer, right? She was concise, clear, memorable, no rambling, no resume walkthrough, just here's what I do, here's how I do it, here's the impact. And when you hear that, you immediately understand her value. That is what hiring managers are looking for in that first answer. And remember, that is your first impression, your opportunity to set the stage for the rest of the interview. So when you stand out, when you blow them away with an answer that usually is an answer that leaves hiring managers' eyes glazing over, you're positioning yourself as someone who stands out right off the bat. And that's what I want for every person that I work with, because I don't just want you to get the offer. I want you to be the standout candidate so you have the maximum amount of negotiating power to get everything you want and everything you deserve when it comes to negotiating and solidifying that offer. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, I see myself in this, I've had these same challenges. Here are three things that you can take away right now. The first one is diagnose the problem correctly. If you're getting interviews but not offers, stop tweaking your resume. Your resume is working, you're getting interviews. Start instead focusing on how you're communicating. Number two, stop relying on your experience to speak for itself. It won't. At senior levels, you need to speak for your experience clearly, concisely, confidently. Number three, start defining your core themes. Ask yourself, what do people consistently come to me for? What problems do I solve better than others? How do I actually create impact? And push yourself beyond surface level answers to that 200K articulation. That's the level I want you to operate at. So back to Taylor. We built her stories before the holidays at the end of 2025. And when we reconnected after the break, she actually had some job opportunities on her radar that she wanted to share with me. And she did. And not going to lie, I was a little bit puzzled because none of them were aligned with what she was looking for. And I asked a few questions and then I realized, oh, she's feeling the pressure. And who wouldn't be, right? After more than 5 months of job searching. She was feeling urgency, right? There was that voice in her head that was saying, maybe you should just take something, take anything. And I've experienced a lot of people in this situation, so I totally get it. I did what I do with any client who's experiencing this. I get the most important information, right? How are things looking for you financially? How much time do you have before things get stressful? Because that is different for everyone. And I'm going to make different recommendations based on that answer. Now, in Taylor's case, she still had about 6 months of savings left. And that's when I gave her the mindset reset that she really needed. And she actually said to me, this is one of the most powerful things that happened during our time working together. And I'm actually going to just read you the message I sent to her because you might need these words today too. So after we had this conversation, I said, you are not in a phase of desperation where you need to accept whatever comes along. You are in a phase of intention. You're ready for meaningful, rewarding work that allows you to use your creativity, your technical expertise, your passion for AI and automation, your ability to design and influence effective go to market strategy. And just as important, you're ready to be seen and valued for that. This is not a continuation of your 2025 job search. This is a brand new chapter. You're showing up with fresh stories, renewed energy, a clean slate, and the language to clearly articulate your value. You have a lot to offer, and now you have the words to convey it. That's why you're going to find the right aligned opportunity. After she read that message and let it sink in, she said, you know what, you're right. I'm going to get refocused on this and I'm going to put those two opportunities that are not aligned at all on the back burner for now. And I'm really glad she did because 2 weeks later, she got a message to do a recruiter screening for a role that actually aligned. It literally checked every single box. Okay. The right sized company at the perfect stage of maturity, the right scope of work, a 220K compensation package. And this time, she was ready. She had the stories, she had the clarity, she had the confidence. She moved through the process. We did a mock interview. She had to do a demo and a practice discovery call. And she nailed it and she got the offer. And that's what I want you to take from this episode. The problem was never about her experience or capability, right? The problem is that you haven't been taught how to communicate your capability like Taylor. And once you learn that skill, everything changes. So if you're listening to this and thinking that's exactly what I've been struggling with, I want to invite you to my free Power Story Playbook Masterclass because this is exactly what we're going to work on. How to define your core themes, build your power stories, communicate your value in a way that actually lands. And you are going to learn a repeatable framework that you can implement right away to build your power story. So this is happening March 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can sign up through the link in the show notes, or you can DM me Power Story on Instagram or LinkedIn, and I will get you signed up. If this episode resonated with you, send it to someone you know who is doing incredible work, but maybe isn't being seen for it, because chances are they also don't need more experience. They just need the language. Thanks so much for joining me today. If this episode resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Send me a DM on LinkedIn or Instagram, and make sure you follow and subscribe so you don't miss any of my weekly episodes here on Unleash Your Voice. Until next time, remember, your story is the one thing you have that no one else has. I'll see you next week.